episode of Fair Play contains language some may find distressing. Kia ora, I'm Zoe George and welcome to the May episode of Fair Play, a podcast covering women in sport, from athletes and results to current affairs and issues. You can listen online at wispsports.com or rnz.co.nz. You'll find all our previous episodes there. If you want more about sport, wispsports.com has a fantastic array of sports podcasts covering everything from psychology to soccer. We've got an audience of 1.8 million in 65 countries. And if you're wanting something non-sporty, rnz.co.nz is the place to go to find some fabulous, award-winning podcasts covering politics to sex. You can also keep up to date with us and all the happenings on social media at wispsports, at rnz and at producer_Zoe. On this month's episode, we talk about linguistics behind sports, from fraternity to batsmen. We bring you an update on the Basin Reserve, including what is happening with those toilets. We chat to Sophie Devine, who's off to India and Ireland. Our major story today covers disability, gender and rugby. This month's co-host is paraclimber Rachel Carter, who first joined our roster of talented co-hosts in December. As a teen, she had a climbing accident which caused a severe and permanent injury to her left leg, which left her wheelchair-bound for a time. Everything changed, though, 3 years ago when she underwent experimental surgery, and now she's scaling new heights. Kia ora, welcome back to Fair Play, Rachel. It's lovely to have you.
Hi, thanks for having me in again.
We haven't seen you since December. What have you been up to?
I have been picking up a few firsts in competitions, national and regional level, which was really exciting. I think last time we spoke I was sitting on the third spot and training hard.
You've been doing different disciplines of climbing, haven't you?
Regionals in Mount Maunganui, I arrived to the surprise that it was going to be Olympic format. So that meant doing speed and difficulty and boulder.
Wow.
And two of those I haven't done in the last 20 years.
So how did you react to that when you found that out?
Well, the last time I bouldered, I left in an ambulance, and that's sort of what's left me in this position as a paraclimber. So definitely the fear set in, but I think that's where I found the second place in boulder as a bigger win, even though I was first in speed in the end, having never tried it, and first in difficulty. For me, the win was just overcoming that fear and giving it a go. Wow.
So what's the difference between bouldering and top roping?
Bouldering, you don't have a rope. Top roping, you do. And I'm a fan of ropes, and I'm not really a fan of gravity.
Yeah.
So definitely, the fear was it was something to deal with, but I felt really good coming off the top of that first boulder. I topped my first boulder on my first attempt, and I pretty much felt like a 5-year-old kid on Christmas morning again. It was a really good feeling.
Are you here in Wellington? What are you doing here? Because normally you're based in Whanganui, is that correct?
Yes, I'm based there. I train in Oakuni and up in Taranaki at New Plymouth Climbing Wall. But I am involved in a Parafed event. Parafed Wellington are running what I think might be their first climbing session for young people with disabilities. That's at the Hangdog Climbing Wall in the Hut. And I've been asked to speak a little bit about my experiences with that, and then also to do a wee climbing demo, so no pressure. But it's a really exciting thing to be involved in. I personally haven't stopped being afraid when I climb. Gravity is definitely still on my shoulder. But when I'm up there, I feel like it's just me against the wall and against my disability, and I like to beat both. So being able to sort of pass that message on to young people who are perhaps me 20 years ago, that's a really good feeling to be able to be involved in that. I'm really excited about it.
Absolutely. Well, we'll talk more about what you've got coming up in the next little while. But first, our major story of this episode covers disability in sport. Junior rugby is well underway around the country. It's a growing sport with girls, and it's no surprise, following the successes in both women's international 7s and 15s. Certain junior players are required to fill out dispensation forms to play in different grades. Ken Trass's 8-year-old daughter is one player who had to fill out the form. She's been playing Ripper Rugby for 2 years and wants to move up to tackle grade with her teammates. Recently, she won Player of the Day in her tackle team. Great stuff. Originally, Ken thought he had to fill out the form because his daughter is considered underweight, and regardless of gender, this is a safety issue. So Ken filled out the form provided to him by Wellington Rugby Football Union via his club. But it turns out weight has nothing to do with it. The dispensation form asks what grounds are being sought for regrading. In the same section, there's temporary and permanent physical condition, temporary or permanent developmental condition, and female player. Then the form asks the applicant about how the, quote, condition affects their safety and enjoyment of the game. Ken says this form basically insinuates being female was a disability or an impediment of some kind. He says he's not the only one who's questioned the form and says there's still an unconscious bias that permeates rugby. He says the form is bigger than him or his daughter. It's a rugby-wide discussion about the culture within rugby that he defines as, quote, boys and others attitude. But huge strides are being made both at national level by New Zealand Rugby Union and at domestic and club level by associations like the Wellington Rugby Football Union. Significant numbers of female development officers are being hired around the country to help grow the numbers, and the game is being adapted to suit girls and women. And Ken says the volunteers and coaches are being supportive of the girls playing rugby. When I first contacted Wellington Rugby Union about this, I was told that I was, quote, making something out of nothing, and that this is, quote, clickbaity. To discuss the issues around the form, disability, access, gender, we are here today joined by New Zealand Rugby's Head of Women of Development, Kate Sexton, and Disability Rights Commissioner and former international para-athlete, Paula Tesoriero. Kate, I'm going to start with you. Does this insinuate that being a female player is akin to having a disability?
No. Everyone reads things differently, and I suppose it is unfortunate, the placement of the option for females to seek regrading. But the intention really after talking to Wellington Rugby, the form is to give females an opportunity to play down depending on where they are in their rugby development, I suppose. So my daughter is one of those. Libby, we requested that she stay down in her age group. She is heavier, and they dispensated her for it. So it is unfortunate where the wording is placed, but it was more around the intention of allowing girls the opportunity to play where is best suited for them.
Giving them a safe environment where they can participate in sport is so important.
Absolutely, yeah. And I suppose there's parents listening that would say, well, that would be the same case for my son, and I absolutely get that. But where we are in our evolution of rugby and girls and women playing rugby, we're actually trying to open those channels up as much as we can, and we do that at secondary school and into the senior women's as well. Some of our requirements are different to the men, and it's really just pushing our boundaries as far as we can to give them every opportunity to play in a really meaningful competition for them that they'll enjoy and stay involved in rugby.
Paula, what do you make of this form?
Well, I think it's fantastic, the growth in women's rugby, and as a spectator, that's been great to see. I think when I look at this form, my very initial reaction was, I think you touched on it, Kate, that would the same arguments from time to time not apply to males, and perhaps actually it's not the existence of being female which is an issue, it's particular attributes which may apply equally to a male as they do a female. So my initial reaction was that perhaps a box which was not just limited to a female player might, provide an opportunity to actually talk about what the characteristics are that a person is seeking a regrading. I think the other point that has been touched on, Zoe and Kate, both by you, is the placement of where female player is. And actually, I don't think we should be too concerned about anybody being labelled as being disabled. Disabled people can live great lives and fulfilling lives, and I'm very conscious in my role that I want to change attitudes towards disabled people, and I wouldn't like to think that there was an underlying view that somehow to be labelled disabled is a bad thing.
Yes, being disabled is not a bad thing. Rachel is off to represent New Zealand in paraclimbing very soon, which we'll talk more about later, which is incredible. What this parent is saying about this form is that it basically insinuates being female is a disability in itself. When it comes to male sports like rugby, is being a woman a disability?
No, it clearly would not meet the definition of what a disability is at all.
Yeah, it's hard for a listener to see the form, but you could take out the female player, and I could have ticked the box. Libby is, temporary development condition and then that could conjure up all sorts of things, that she just wasn't ready to play up. But it's certainly, it's not a disability, but it was never the intent for that. It was just an opportunity for more girls to be able to play and stay in the game, especially when they start tackling. And what we're finding now is that, girls want to play with girls and boys want to play with boys. And we have mixed grades right up to under 13. But what we're finding is the more opportunities for girls to play in female grades only, we're getting more and more players coming involved, and which is fantastic for our sport. But I wouldn't see it as a disability, it's just different.
We're talking with New Zealand Rugby Head of Women's Development Kate Sexton and Disability Rights Commissioner and former international para-athlete Paula Tesoriero. Our co-host today is Rachel Carter, para-climber. Rachel, do you compete against men and women, and do you compete against both disabled and able-bodied people?
So I'm in a female category, and I'm certainly thankful for that in my sport. Personally, I like the segregation. There's just some things that are a little bit extra challenging for women, in particular so chin-ups. That's something I've been trying to work on for quite some time and can't master it, but my 10-year-old can pop on the bar and just whip out 6 just like that, my 10-year-old son. So I'm thankful for that segregation. I have had the experience of competing in an able-bodied category, and whilst I came last, I probably would rank that as one of my biggest accomplishments, because it was me sort of proving, I guess, to Climbing NZ that I'm really serious about my sport. And I guess what I was saying is I want there to be the same opportunities. So, but if I always had to compete against able-bodied people, then I would feel like I was always going to fail, and that would not be, I guess it would just take the fun out of the sport, because as much as we do it for our own accomplishment, winning does kind of feel good as well. Yeah, I think there's definitely a time and a place for different categories.
Paula, should we segregate sport via gender?
Well, it's certainly not unlawful to. I mean, it's very common practice that exceptions are made in competitive sport, and exceptions made between parasport and non-parasport. So those exceptions exist, and I guess it's an attempt to take into account the various characteristics of both gender and disability and any other exceptions that are lawfully made.
Kate, I understand the NZRU have got some, is it the deaf All Blacks that play on an international scale, and there's a whole lot of different types of rugby that you can play depending on your ability?
Yeah, and that's something that we're really proud of, and we're working hard with. We're trialling walking with us. We've looked at those that have limited sight and intellectual challenges, but also people who have, their hips don't work so well and their knees don't work so well anymore, who have played rugby all their lives, and, just new things like that. And I don't believe it's just New Zealand Rugby's responsibility. I mean, we work alongside organisations to allow rugby to be part of their lives, and it's not just playing, it's getting involved in clubs and being, part of the club or the association that they want to be involved with. So, there's a lot of people that don't play but are involved in rugby. And I just want to touch on, you talk about segregating males and females. I think for me the biggest thing in my role is being able to create the same opportunities. It doesn't mean to say that they have to play together in the same grades or the same competitions, but having females being able to play, have the same opportunities as males is really what we're working hard at New Zealand Rugby.
Before I let you go, a couple of other quick questions. So what's going to be done about this form? Are you going to rejig this form? Are you going to talk to Wellington Rugby about it? Or are you just going to leave it as is?
The provincial unions know their communities the best. It's really up to each provincial union how they dispensate, how they grade players, because health and safety has to be paramount. And so they're slightly different, and especially in the Heartland region, it's a different again, because as what works best for them. So we work alongside them, and I know Wellington Rugby have taken down the form, and there will be a separate form for a female being dispensated down to a lower grade. So there has been changes already, and it was never the intention from Wellington Rugby grouping the females with different disabilities, physical or development disabilities, but it was really to give them more of an opportunity. So I commend them for that. It's just unfortunate where it's grouped and how it's worded, but they're working on that. So it's always great to get that feedback.
We were chatting with New Zealand Rugby Head of Women's Development, Kate Sexton, and Disability Rights Commissioner and former international para-athlete Paula Tesoriero. Thank you both for joining us on this discussion. Well, that was a really interesting discussion around women, disability rugby, unconscious bias. Rachel?
Yes.
And the language that we use, though, and associate with sport is something that's fascinating, and that "well done, guys" is a phrase I've heard a bit of. Justin Lester, Wellington's mayor, recently thanked the cricket fraternity for their support, and we refer to female cricketers as batsmen. So when we talk about female athletes, how should we talk about them? And actually, more often than not, female athletes are commonly referred to as girls, even as grown women. Before we talk to Massey University's Professor Sarah Lieberman about this, Rachel, language and disability is a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think you make a really relevant point that it's often a subconscious bias. I think you use that phrase. And part of that, I think, is tied up with our Kiwi culture of humour. I think that many a time people are caught out sort of getting drawn into some of the banter and the humour, and more often perhaps in sort of maybe sporting areas. I think it's really important to remember that just because we're using a particular type of language or joking along and someone's not saying, "Hey, I don't like that," it doesn't mean they like it. And assuming that it's all good is not really an excuse. It's really important to sort of be aware that our words have an effect, and to check in with people. They're your team, we're a community. Make sure we're looking after each other.
Community.
Yeah.
That's the word, isn't it?
Yeah. It's an important word. And I think that's where sports are so valuable. And, Paula touched on it as well. And particularly around disability, the effect that sport can have on an individual who does have a disability. I just can't speak enough for how, I guess, climbing for me has been such an encouraging experience and such an uplifting experience. And it's amazing when you've come from a part of your life where you feel really disconnected from the people around you and you feel like you can't 100% join in with them, to then find yourself in an environment where everybody's boosting you up and encouraging you and saying, look, you can do it. And that's where language has the power to have so much change on an individual's life.
We're joined by Professor Sarah Lieberman from Massey University here in New Zealand. The word fraternity, Sarah, where does this fit into the sporting vernacular?
Well, I think it's quite historical if you think about things. I think traditionally when we talk about fraternity, it's been associated with the people who have run an organised sport, which we know in the past, at least visibly, has been men in leadership positions and on boards. And so what we're needing to do is we're needing to think quite carefully about how we talk about, and I would suggest, our communities. So the word that Rachel's used, I think, is really good, because community is inclusive. If we talk about the cricketing community or the hockey community or the rugby community, then I think everybody can find a place. As soon as we use the word fraternity, it excludes anybody who doesn't identify as male or feel that they fit into that environment. So community is a better word. I also think there's quite a bit of work to do just internally within teams and within the language that we use. It was interesting, I saw there was a piece on Stuff today just around cricket and the White Ferns. And I just was interested that the comment was that they've appointed Jacob Oram as one of the bowling coaches, and he's saying he's having to really work on the fact not to call them girls, because he was so used to, even when he was with the men, calling them boys. And so that's some work that needs to be done internally within teams to figure out what works for them. And I do think we also need to be mindful that you can go so far that then it's really difficult to say anything, and we don't want to do that either. So that balance of making sure, particularly in a public domain, that we use language that is inclusive, so everybody can find a place.
Referring to women and girls is okay in some contexts, isn't it? So it can be a familiarity thing.
Yep.
You know, you're part of the team and it's part of that team culture. But when you've got media calling athletes girls, women, girls, it's not acceptable, is it?
No, it's totally not acceptable at all in any shape or form. So I just think we have to really call people out on it and make sure that we lead by example in terms of the language that we use, and call people and feel like we have an environment where that's okay to speak up.
What about the term, so let's go back to cricket. You talked about white ferns just before, and cricket is the main sport that we cover here on Fair Play. The term batsmen is a traditional term that's associated with cricket. Cricket is referred to as the gentleman's game. Should we be calling our athletes who go out to bat batsmen?
Well, I mean, my view would be no. I would just call them batters. But, it's the same as we still see in a number of organisations. They have chairmen rather than a chair. You can just use chair for the role, but it's about a change, and it's about the language. Words roll easily off the tongue, the ones that we hear and we've used a lot. So if we call everybody who goes and bats a batter, then we need to practice saying that so that it then becomes what we say.
Rachel, language within the disability community, when you first had your injury, you faced some really horrible words that were fired at you. That's got to be quite demeaning and hard to get through at times, isn't it?
Yeah, I think maybe because you don't realise how much you're starting to pick those labels up and wear them yourself. I think that's where it sort of adds to the disability. And certainly something I've been sharing a bit with young sort of high school students this week, a few speaking opportunities, has been the idea that nobody gets to rent space in your head. And that's a really important thing to consider, is that people will use language. They may do it on purpose, they may do it without really thinking, but when we can overcome that and really consciously choose who we want to be and which labels we're going to wear, then we've got so much potential. It's really cool.
Before we move on and go on to our next subject, Sarah, Whisper, which is Women in Sport Aotearoa, is a year old. Congratulations.
Yes,
how's that going?
Oh, it's going from strength to strength. It's fantastic. We never think in our wildest dream, when Julie Patterson and myself had this idea of setting up an organisation to advocate for girls and women in sport in New Zealand, that we would be where we are now. So, we launched International Women's Day 2017, and a year on, we, together with Sport New Zealand and New Zealand Olympic Committee, ATED, which is Auckland Tourism Events and Economic Development, bid for the hosting rights for the 8th International Women's Working Group on Women in Sport, and we secured that bid. And actually, a delegation is currently in Botswana right now as we speak, where it will be announced and will happen, I guess, tomorrow morning our time. And then we will be hosting the Secretariat for 4 years from the 1st of October with the International Conference in Auckland in mid-2022. So it's been fantastic, and driven largely in part, I would say, by the election of the new government. We have Minister Grant Robinson. He's made women in sport his key priority. So that has really been incredibly helpful in positioning women in sport Aotearoa in a position to be the lead role in making sure that we host this secretariat. So it's incredibly exciting, and we couldn't have imagined this when we thought about this, about 18 months ago.
Over the next 4 years, what work's going to be done in the build-up to the conference?
Well, so what we're doing at the moment is just finalising a strategic plan. So obviously, Whisper, Women in Sport Aotearoa, we have our own strategic plan, but the International Working Group also has a strategic plan, and so we're doing a bit of work at the moment to link up those two to make sure that we can both deliver on our objectives for New Zealand Aotearoa going forward past the 4 years, but also that we make sure we deliver on the IWG ones. So the IWG ones are primarily more internationally focused. Their mission is about empowering women and advancing sport, and what they're trying to do is promote the awareness of girls and women in sport and physical activity, basically across the world, but linking in with international organisations. So that includes the United Nations, UN agencies, other international intergovernmental organisations, and it's about monitoring the progress and implementation of the Brighton Declaration on Women in Sport, which was signed way back in 1994. And we've been a signatory to that, as in New Zealand, and so our job is to with the hosting the Secretariat, to make sure we stay on top of this, that we link in internationally, and that we represent our other member groups through this as well.
Brilliant. Oh, well, we look forward to seeing what happens. Any final words on language and sport, Sarah?
Just that I think it's critical, and I think we need to move away from, often prefacing everything about a woman athlete or a female athlete. They're athletes, right? And they're athletes and players. Doesn't matter whether they're male or female. They're athletes and players, and we shouldn't always have to preface it, because that's what we often find. So it'd be great to recognise people for their achievements, irrespective of whether they're male or female.
It's like women's cricket, women's rugby. It's like, actually, it's not women's cricket, women's rugby. It's just cricket and it's just rugby. That's all.
Correct. Yes.
Mercy University's Professor Sarah Lieberman, lovely chatting to you.
Thank you.
Talking about cricket, Sophie Devine, Fair Play co-host, is off to India, then on tour with the White Ferns. I caught up with her before she flew out to participate in the IPL exhibition match and started by asking if this is the future of women's T20 cricket.
Yeah, look, I think so. I know that there's been rumours probably floating around the last couple of years about a women's IPL coming on board, and I think this is probably the next step to it, just sort of trying to gauge interest and just see where the public grab hold of it or not. I think the way the Indian women's team's performed over the last couple of years, I think it'd be only a matter of time before something like the women's IPL or something very similar, comes into play. The success of the women's Big Bash over in Australia and the Care Super League in the UK, I'm sure that the Indians will want a piece of that too.
Yeah, very interesting reading this week that the Australian Big Bash is now separated from the men's Big Bash and they're going to be run separately, which is quite incredible.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. I know that was always sort of the plan, is for it to become, I guess, a standalone event. And I guess over the last, year or two in particular, the crowds that they've got and the impact they've had on the public has been enormous. And now I think it is. It's just the next logical step is that to separate it out from the men's. And it will be interesting to see if they get the same crowds and the same numbers along. But I think, they've got some fantastic work in sort of on the ground level, which I think will hold it in good stead.
We're chatting with Sophie Devine. Now, you're also off overseas with the White Ferns. Where are you heading to?
Yeah, we're very exciting, actually. We head over to Ireland first up, which we haven't been in, I think, close to sort of 15-odd years. So that's cool that we get to take on the Irish. I don't think we've played them outside of a World Cup event for, quite a long time. So that'll be good for us to get our feet in and use it as a bit of a warm-up leading into our UK sort of leg of the tour. We take on, obviously, the English, but we're also playing in a T20 tri-series with South Africa as well. So a lot of quality opposition over on our northern tour.
What's the realistic goal for that tour?
Yeah, look, I think, again, it's another stepping stone. We've got a big pinnacle event, the World T20 in the West Indies later this year, so I think that's sort of the end goal. So if we can blood a few new players and get people gaining a bit more experience against, like I said, high-quality opposition, I think that's going to hold us in really good stead when it comes to those big key events.
And you're flying business class for the first time outside of an ICC event. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, it's obviously fantastic news. New Zealand Cricket have obviously pulled that through, which is awesome, obviously, with the news of the football ferns as well. I think it's great news for women's sport in general. I think the biggest thing for us, I know a few people have probably said, well, it seems to be a real luxury, but to be able to arrive at your destination and be fresh, well, a lot fresher than when you're stuck in cattle class, I guess. It just means that we can get stuck into training. It means we can get going a lot sooner than if we were to fly economy. So, yeah, look, very grateful for New Zealand Cricket for jumping on that, and we'll definitely have to make the most of it.
And the retainers and contracts, central contracts, have been announced for the Black Caps with the retainer of $90,000 as the minimum. Has anything been in the talks for women?
No, our MOU negotiations come up next year, so we're, I think, just ploughing ahead with how things are at the moment, but obviously the men are taking part in master agreement conversations, so look, it's been interesting to see what comes out of that, but it's something that the Players Association has a great hold of, and we have full trust in what they do and how they represent us. So yeah, look, it's a really exciting time for women's sport, not just here in New Zealand but around the world. It certainly is becoming a lot more professional in all regards.
Do you ever think we'll have parity like the football ferns in cricket? It's a tough question, I know.
Yeah, it is. But, I mean, we're going to get asked it plenty. I think it's an interesting one. Look, we'd always hope for that. And the old argument always comes back to, well, we don't bring in the crowds, we don't bring in the revenue. But I think there needs to be a level of investment, which means we can, get exposed to a greater eye, more publicity, I think, is something that's really important. I know one of the things I was most chuffed about the last season was that all our games were live streamed, and I think that's a great start. So it's hard to, catch people's attention if they don't know where you are, where you're playing, or who you are. So I think, if we can get that sort of investment at that sort of base level, I think that'll be really important. And then from there, who knows? I think we're always going to be a little different here in New Zealand anyway. I don't think we've got the same, pool of funds as in Aussie or in England. So I think we're always going to be a little bit behind them. But look, we can find other ways around that.
That's White Fern's Sophie Devine. I hope she goes well. Very exciting that she's been invited to play in this incredible game. Whole bunch of female cricketers from around the world playing an exhibition match in front of a huge crowd in India. Amazing. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they go in their tri-series. They're playing against England and South Africa. And then later on in the year, I think it's about November, they're off to the West Indies to play in the T20 World Cup finals. So that
will it be screened? That's the question, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So I think it would be very, very nice if RNZ and Wisp Sports would like to send me to the West Indies to cover this, because it would be fantastic to get more coverage.
Take a co-host.
I think I should definitely take a co-host.
I'm in.
Sounds good. Finally, toilet upgrades, our favourite subject on Fair Play. Rachel, I'm sure we haven't talked about this, but we have an ongoing discussion about the toilets at the Basin Reserve. Long story short, there are way more men's toilets than women's. They're a bit of a state, and so we've been in discussions with them to try and get an update on the toilets. So the Wellington City Council recently announced a $7 million investment in upgrading the clock stand, which is very exciting, and this means the toilets within the stand will be upgraded too. The council says we're currently doing the preliminary design, about 10% complete, for the toilets and the eastern embankment. The intention at this stage is to upgrade the toilets next winter, ready for the summer of 2019-2020. This is a subject to planning and consenting and a raft of other preconditions to actually doing the work. The developed designs for the clock stand have not been done yet, but based on the concept designs, there will be new accessible toilets in the basement level of the museum stand, which are intended to service the new play area and community spaces, as well as on game days and events. There will also be more toilets built on level 1 of the stand to service the museum stand and this side of the ground. For example, they will be accessible for patrons seated on the terraces too. They're also planning to install more women's and accessible toilets. Nice. At this stage, Perfect. They don't have any plans for more family rooms. You have had some interesting experience with accessible toilets, though, waiting behind able-bodied people to use a toilet that is meant for those with disabilities.
Yes, I have. And I think nobody plans to get in a line and make things difficult on someone behind them who is perhaps sitting on the concrete floor because they can't actually stand. It does come down to, if you don't know and you don't relate to that and you haven't had that experience, then I guess you are in a place of ignorance. And for myself, I feel like I don't need to wave some big sign that says, woe is me, I deserve the toilet more than you. But it can be helpful to just sort of graciously educate people that it can be really hard work mobilising and getting about. In this situation that you're referring to, there came along a woman in a wheelchair, and I just nicely said, look, would you like to go in front of me? I can only let you in one spot in front. You're still going to have 6 other people standing to line up behind. And then everybody else let her go first. And then, lo and behold, they turned around and also let me go first, and someone helped me up off the ground.
Well, we're going to continue this conversation around toilets. You know that I will.
I think you will.
And we look forward to seeing what kind of designs they come up with. What would you like to see in the toilet designs? Would you prefer gender-neutral toilets? How many disability toilets?
Do you know, I can't say I've really thought too much about it. I certainly don't manage to. I have this sort of weird prosthetic leg thing that I strap on to walk about, and when you're sitting in that, the leg kind of hangs out the front. So if you're in a really narrow toilet, you just can't get the door shut. So
give me
a bit of space.
Yeah, just a little bit of space would be nice. A little bit of space, yeah. Well, that's it for Fair Play. Thank you so much to all of our guests: Wellington Rugby, Disability Rights Commissioner Paula Tesoriero, Professor Sarah Lieberman, Sophie Devine, and our wonderful co-host Rachel Carter. Now, before I let you go, are you going to be the first New Zealander, not just New Zealand woman, but the first New Zealander to represent New Zealand in paraclimbing?
I am, and it feels super surreal. I don't really feel like a history maker. I still just feel like a girl that likes to climb because I feel really free up there. But I'm really excited. I'm going to Ohio to the USA National Adaptive Championship. It's going to be so amazing to climb alongside a much bigger group of participants who are climbing adaptively. And I love that hashtag #AdaptDefy. I feel like that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I'm really looking forward to meeting people who do that and who are killing it and being inspired. And then, of course, bringing all that information back to New Zealand and getting the sport growing and developing more here.
History maker. I love that.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Cool. Crazy cool. Crazy cool.
Well, you're making a pathway up the rock face for so many other people.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Thank
We
you.
wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
Go well.
Thank you.
And we look forward to following your progress as you climb to great heights.
Thank you.
Lots of puns intended in that one.
Oh, we're doing well on puns today.
Yay. You can follow and join in on the conversation on social media at Wisp Sports, at RNZ and at producer_Zoe. It's been an absolute pleasure, Rachel. We wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
I'm Zoe George. Until next time, don't forget to play hard but play fair.